Welcome to Donnybrook. Next up, we are already having a lively discussion with our special guest, St. Charles County Executive Steve Ehlmann. Welcome.
Glad to be here, Wendy.
Since you have accepted our invitation, one of the biggest stories in the region today is a sudden flashpoint, a little bit of a feud between you and Mayor Jones. Have you officially commented on her response to your original piece?
I did respond to some of it, and her biggest concern, and rather than address the problem that I'm trying to address, she was critical of the fact that I hadn't talked to her first. And what I pointed out is everything that was in my piece, it was in the Business Journal, was taken from my testimony last September to a Senate Interim Committee on Regional Issues that met at Lindenwood College. Senator Gannon from Jeff County was the chair, and her and I both testified, one and then the other. And I mentioned every single one of those things a year ago. And
so she was there? She
was there, and she heard it. She didn't respond. The problem was the media didn't cover it the way they are now. But there was nothing new. We had a bill put in last year in Jefferson City. There was a bill in to go ahead and return to the system we had for 150 years, which I hope we never have to do. You know, where the governor appoints the members of the commission. Hope we never have to do that. But I think a discussion needs to begin now. And hopefully, you know, Bill, nothing ever happens quick in Jefferson City. Let's start the discussion now, and before they do something, the city can fix it on their own, and we'll be all happy.
Well, Steve, one of the problems I had with your idea about one prosecutor is, you know, I've been a big critic of Kim Gardner, and I think the office is chaotic under her. And I remember talking to Eric Schmidt right before COVID when he wanted to bring in...
Excuse me, Bill. You're going to have to turn your microphone on because we are losing all of this wisdom.
Okay. Well, there wasn't much wisdom to lose there, believe me.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you. I was saying that I've been a major critic of Kim Gardner. And I keep running into the wall of the fact that she has been elected and reelected. And I can remember talking to Eric Schmidt before COVID when he wanted the AG's office to start prosecuting murder cases. And I said to him, well, the problem is there's an elected prosecutor already. And Steve, it seems like a lot of us old white guys want to wiggle around somehow to undo Kim Gardner, but she's elected.
Yes, and the next prosecutor will be elected too, just from a larger pool of voters. And Bill, there's nothing unprecedented about this. You know, before 1876, the city and county were in one circuit, had one prosecutor. Jackson County, where Kansas City is, still has a situation there where they have one circuit, city and county. They have two courthouses, one in the city, one in Independence. That's what we would have. We would have, everything would stay the same. No judge, no circuit, no clerk, no janitor would lose their job. The only thing that would be changed is there would be a single prosecutor elected in both, and we would be have the exact situation they have in Kansas City.
Well, but Steve, you're realistic enough to know that Kim Gardner's fans are not going to sit idly by while you from St. Charles come up with a plan to take her out of the equation, which is what would happen.
Bill, you know, I can come up with all the plans I want. The question is anybody in Jeff City going to be interested enough to put in a bill? And after we put in a bill, will people come up and have a real debate and discussion? You know, I'm glad to be part of this show because as far as I know, this is the only place in media around St. Louis where people with opposing views actually come together in the same room and talk about them. You debate them, and sometimes you argue with each other. And what Kim Gardner thinks or what Steve Ehlmann or Tashara Jones thinks is not important. It's what the legislature thinks.
No, well, you know, we went through this with Better Together, the idea that will allow the collective wisdom in Jefferson City to determine what the city and county should do. And people in the city and county said, we don't want that. And I think I know you're going to run into that too. People are not going to say, okay, we'll let the collective wisdom in Jefferson City make decisions for us.
I
Well,
thought
then-
that was the state constitution, though. I mean, I thought the state constitution dictated that it was going to have to be through Jefferson City. Isn't that correct?
Well, Steve's talking about a bill in Jefferson City.
Right.
getting
See,
a bill.
there's some debate about this, but I think probably to do the prosecutor thing, they can combine the circuits. That's not a problem. You can do a law to do that. You may have to change the Constitution to go ahead and have just one prosecutor, in which case it wouldn't be the legislators in Jefferson City. It'd be people in the entire state would decide. And the problem here is if this problem were just in Franklin or Jefferson or St. Charles or even St. Louis County, it'd be one thing. But it's in the city of St. Louis, and this is the face. The city is the face of the entire region. And when the city has a problem with crime, people in the entire country look at the fact and think that the whole region has a problem with crime. And what we need to do to get the region moving forward, I think, is solve the crime problem. And if I don't have the right solution, fine. What is the solution? The status quo is just not acceptable.
You're right. The hub, the city is absolutely the hub, is what you're saying. And if it is starting to collapse, then it's going to take the spokes with it.
Well, you know, the whole Republican idea of local control that you guys have talked about for years, the idea that you're going to take local control away from the city of St. Louis and let the people of the state make the decisions, I just don't
That's
get
what
that.
that's what was wrong with Better Together.
Yes, and I think
Definitely.
what's wrong
You
with
know
this.
why the Republicans like local control? Because the Democrats controlled the legislature and the governor's office for almost 50 years in Jefferson City. So yeah, we didn't like Jefferson City. The Republicans wanted local control. And I still like local control. The mayor asked me to go up and testify, and I did, to give the city local control back. And I would love to see the city solve this problem without the legislature intervening. And I've been thinking about this for at least 5 years, but trying to give the city a chance to come up with some solutions, even if they don't work. But instead of taking the approach that I shouldn't be involved and the legislature shouldn't be involved, I just challenge the people in the city. If they don't like what I'm talking about, then what are we going to do? Come up with another plan. But I don't think we can go down the road we've been on. And the latest problem, of course, and Bill, you've been around the cops more than I have. I've been around them a lot the last 7 years and learned a lot.
Sure.
And they're not all angels, and also know they have a very tough job.
Of course.
And if we can't get back to where we were, and again, the idea of the highway patrol coming in to help, okay? That's not unprecedented. You remember?
No, and I think the mayor has now said she supports
I know he
that too.
remembers. Wendy, do you remember in '93 they had the crack cocaine wars?
I actually do remember that, sure.
And the number of murders went up to 200.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The city asked Governor Carnahan to send in the highway patrol. And they did. And I've talked to people who in a prosecutor's office back then. They hired a bunch of people. I mean, there was a real effort. Within 3 years, they had that murder rate back down to where it had been before. So if we bring in a highway patrol, if we put the governor in charge of appointing members of a commission, I don't care what we do. Whatever they do, it should be conditioned upon this problem continuing to exist. And if we can get it solved, then we can go back to total local control.
Mayor Jones made the point in her response, either on KMOX or in an interview with KMOV. She said that she would be welcome, or she would welcome resources from St. Charles County if you wanted to offer them to help her address some of the issues that they face in the city. Are you open to that?
Yeah, and I can send you a list of how much money goes to the city from the rest of the region, and nobody's ever complained about that. I mean, they had a hearing today on the earnings tax report. We pay taxes when we come and shop here, when we go to the Cardinal game. I mean, the entire region. It's the state taxpayers who paid for half of the cost of the dome, of the convention center, and the other half was paid for by visitors to the city who stayed in the hotels and motels.
Sure.
So there's a lot of revenue that has been going to the city for a long time, And, you know, if revenue could, what do we have, $500 million in
Just sitting there.
federal money sitting there? We got the NFL money sitting there. If money could fix this, I think we'd be able to fix it. But it's going to take more than just money.
You know, and as far as the money goes, like, you know, I pay earnings tax to the city, but I feel like people who work in the city, we expect certain services. Like, we come in, we want the lights, the traffic lights to work, we want the police to come, we want all these services. So I've never begrudged the city getting earnings tax from the people who come in to work there or to shop there.
Well, but what if they stay at home and work from home?
Well, that's a dodgier question. Although, you know, I still support the earnings tax. I mean, making the city have deeper financial problems isn't going to help anything, is the way I look at it. Even though right now it's flush, I understand that.
That's not the problem. And again, if I can share this story that I've heard, and I'm pretty sure it's true from a good source. I don't know if you've followed, but you know, in Warren County, just right across the border from St. Charles County, they got a new meatpacking plant going in. Okay, I was asked to come out there and meet with the people who were going to put it in. The governor came down and met with them. He's a cattleman, so he talked their language, and I told him what a great region we had and so forth. It was a father and two kids. They went back to Milwaukee, where they were from, and discussed whether to come to St. Louis or to go somewhere else. They have 7 of these around the country. What I'm told is the two kids said, no, we can't go to St. Louis or to Warren County because St. Louis has a crime problem. Well, I don't need to tell you that the distance both geographically and culturally between where this problem exists and Warren County is tremendous. But people in Milwaukee don't know that. And luckily, the father said, no, we're going to go to Warren County, and we'll be just fine there. So we lucked out this time. But that's the problem I think we're dealing with here. As long as the country has a perception that St. Louis has a problem, they look at the whole region. And if they don't look at St. Louis, they're never going to find out about all the good things that are going on in St. Charles County. And that's eventually going to catch up with all of us.
You know, I don't think anybody's arguing that St. Louis doesn't have a huge crime problem and that some of the St. Louis officials are not handling it as well as they could. I just think the problem, Steve, is the idea that we're going to let the rest of the state make these decisions and suddenly we won't have such a crime problem.
But you know we're the economic engine for the entire state.
Yes, indeed.
And if St. Louis City goes down, it hurts St. Charles County. If the region goes down, it hurts the entire state. St. Charles, Jefferson, Franklin, St. Louis County, City, we're all political subdivisions of the state of Missouri. Now, like it or not. And you know, the city, and St. Charles City for that matter, is older than the state. But they're still political subdivisions of the state.
But Steve, what has happened, in your opinion, to divide? I was listening to an interview with Mark Mantovani on KTRS on my way in, and he was saying that we need to work together, that there is this constant bickering and personality conflicts between this leader and that leader. Can you point to any one thing? Has it been growing? Are we just so entrenched in our silos that even the leaders now are taking their cues from the voters who seem to be so polarized? What is it? You've been doing this a long time.
Well, there's nothing wrong in a democracy with leaders taking their cues from the public.
Yeah.
But yes, and I have talked about this several times. I mean, when I was in Jefferson City, you guys remember Jefferson City 20 years ago? The Democrats that I served with, they cared as much as I did about safety on the streets and putting criminals behind bars and all those things. So it's just hard for me to believe, you know, that the people in the city have all changed that much. I know some of the leaders have changed, but you know, when I look back at the people I served with, they were as interested in this as the Republicans were. And I just can't help, you guys know better than I do, there's got to be people in the city who still are dissatisfied and want to go ahead and get it back to where it was, where nobody was afraid to go out at night.
Well, you know, I was night police reporter in 1982 and 1981, and there was a lot of crime and teas and blues and drugs. I mean, so the crime thing isn't too new. But hey, let's go on to something else.
Okay.
As long as Wendy mentioned Mark Mantovani, what do you think? You're the county right next door. You know Sam Page. You know Mantovani. You're a Republican. What do you think, Steve?
What do I think of that?
Yeah. Who are you for?
Well, obviously, Sam and I have become pretty good friends, so I'm not going to say anything bad about Sam. I have also talked to Mr. Mantovani in the past when he ran against Steve Stenger.
Right.
And I was very impressed with him at that time. Even Sam admitted on radio, I think, that he was a serious person, that his ideas should be considered. But at this point, obviously, as a Republican, I guess I'm for Mr. Mantovani, but I'm reluctant to get out there and do more than say that.
Alvin,
Just because I'm going to have to work.
sure.
I'm going to have to work with whoever.
with one of them.
And you
With
guys
one of
know
them.
this is the way it was in Jefferson City too.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
and when I was the Republican floor leader, the Republicans were trying to get some of my colleagues beat, and I obviously was in favor of that, but I tried to stay away from it because in January, if whoever won, I had to come and be able to deal with them.
Right.
So I don't think that you'll see any of the Republican leaders in the region getting that involved with this. Obviously, we'd love to see another Republican. But we're going to have to deal, and this goes to what you're saying, is there anybody out there interested in really working together? It's a shame that the only time this region really starts pulling together is when the Cardinals get in the playoffs.
And speaking of the Cardinals, our colleague Alvin Reed, in the spirit of this conversation, he wanted us to ask you, if crime is such a problem in the city of St. Louis, do you feel safe going down to the stadium to cheer them on in the playoffs?
I do.
You do?
There's 47,000 people there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I feel very safe, and feel safe going to the soccer games too. But the problem is, do the people in the neighborhoods feel safe going down to the grocery store? They're the ones. I mean, they're the ones who, and we talk about all the children who have died, and all those types of things. When I talk about the economic development, maybe it sounds like I'm missing the point. The point here is it's a tragedy for those people living in those neighborhoods who are afraid to walk out and who are seeing their neighbors and their kids killed. And friends killed, and it just doesn't seem to be changing.
Well, is there anything you could do from St. Charles to help the city and North County with its crime problems besides calling to take local control away?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's in my article, and I suggest, is that there's a lot of things that I think law enforcement can do together. St. Louis County has a RIC, and we've joined it. It's an effort to get the police communicating with each other. We have something called the Fusion Center. Are you familiar with that? It was put in to deal with terrorism. In St. Charles County, if we have a suspected terrorist, our police can get on the phone immediately and talk to somebody in the New York City Police Department about terrorism. They probably know more than anybody else. If we have somebody stealing a car and we're chasing them and they're headed across the bridge, we don't have a way to communicate with the people in the city of St. Louis saying, hey, they're going to be there in 10 minutes. And, here's their license plate, here they are. We have established some connections like with Maryland Heights and Bridgeton, so we can at least alert them. But there's also something called the Joint Strike Task Force. And, but again, all these things, some people are in, some aren't. I'd love to see the legislature make everybody get in. But see, St. Louis City has its own RIC. St. Louis County has a RIC. Well, can we have a joint RIC? Because the bad guys don't pay any attention to boundaries. And the only reason they know about boundaries is thinking they can get out of the boundary and we'll quit chasing them.
You have made the point that St. Louis City's loss, ironically, is St. Charles County's gain.
It has
Could
been.
you elaborate on that a little bit? Because, not to put it scientifically, of course, but you're busting at the seams, aren't you?
Well, we are growing. We grew 12.4%. Our minority population is growing. And when I talk to people's African Americans that moved to St. Charles County, I always, so far, everyone I've talked to has moved there for the same reason the whites have. They liked where they lived before, but the schools were going down, the neighborhoods weren't safe. So I think, again, we don't spend a dime on advertising. It's not a pull from us, it's a push. People are being pushed out of the city and even parts of St. Louis County, and they're going to Jefferson, Franklin, St. Charles, and this is a free country, and they're voting with their feet. And we'll continue to have great days for a while in St. Charles County. It's going well, and it will, I don't know how long, but eventually everybody wants to move to St. Charles County will move to St. Charles County, and then the whole region will be no growth. We have got to get the region growing, and I just think to get the region growing, we've got to get this problem taken care of in the city. We've got to get, there are a lot of good things going on with economic development, and I think Greater STL has made some inroads to trying to get people working together. But as long as we have this, again, as long as the face of the region has this problem, I think the whole region suffers.
Well, absolutely true. But there are people who think that St. Charles just has not been really willing to help much. I remember, I think 2016, when we were trying to figure out how to get the zoo more money. And the idea was, hey, let's include St. Charles in the Zoo Museum District, because statistics show that originally it was all city and county people going to the zoo, and now it's mostly St. Louis County, but about the same number from the city and St. Charles go. And we approached, or I say we, the zoo people approached St. Charles County, and you were against it, Steve, and didn't even want it to go to a vote, as I recall.
No, you're talking about the arch.
No,
with the zoo, they did. They came out and talked to me, and I said, you're going to need to get them to change the statute in Jefferson City before we have the authority to put a tax like that out. They went to Jefferson City and got nowhere. The next year, we looked into it and met with people at the zoo. At the time, they were looking to create a conservation area.
I remember that.
Remember that?
I remember when you offered land.
450 acres in Virginia. They went to look at, that's what they wanted to do. We bought an additional 100 acres to the 350 acres we had out near Wentzville, and we offered it to them for $1 a year. We offered to put $1 million towards the operation because we had done some polling. And yes, if we'd have put a tax on for the ZMD, it would not have passed.
Right.
But we polled people. They were willing to contribute to the ZMD to build a facility in St. Charles. And once you get that started, then we become part of it and we move forward. Long story short, they didn't take us up on the $1 for the 450 and $1 million a year. Instead, they put a tax increase on and bought the property out in North St. Louis County.
Right.
And they're just now getting started on that. And I hope, that's fine, I understand. But I hope people in the past, or people in the past who did criticize us, there's still things you can criticize us on, but not working to help the ZMD, I don't think is one of them.
Okay, well, I just remember when you were against it going up for a vote, because you said, hey, we won't support this.
No, I didn't say that about the ZMD. I said that about the arch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm mistaken then.
Yeah.
Do you have your political plans changed? Have your political aspirations changed?
What, beyond doing what I'm doing now? No.
Beyond St. Charles County?
No. No, I'm going to do this for 4 more years. And I'm telling you, things are going well in St. Charles County, but our future is tied to the region. And I think if I can do anything the next 4 years to get the region going, that's what I need to do. And as far as St. Charles County, it's going really well, and I'm going to try not to screw it up.
They got Division I football out there now, don't you?
Yeah, I went to the game on Saturday. I went to the game on Saturday. It was the greatest day for Lindenwood. The stadium was filled. The score didn't turn out like we wanted it to, but it was really a pretty good game until the 4th quarter. And it was just great. It was great to see. We finally We always wanted to be a college town, and we finally are.
We finally are. We only have a minute left. With the boom in terms of the population in St. Charles County and the East-West Gateway Coordinating Council, getting any closer to a third chair?
That's one of the goals. That's one of my goals, yeah. Again, we have, the city has 300,000. We have 450. They have 3 seats. We've got 2.
Right.
As you know, most of the time down there, the votes aren't close. But if it ever did come to a close vote, I'd certainly like to have at least as many seats as the city of St. Louis. And actually, we've worked pretty well down there. There was a lot of Republicans that held their nose and voted for the loop trolley money because the mayor and the county executive said that's important to the region. So there are a lot of examples of us working together. And in the future, Tashara wants to do the same thing to St. Charles County. The response from me is going to be, we don't need it because of A, B, and C. And I would just challenge her. You've raised some good reasons not to be for this. I'd like to see the debate continue here at East-West Gateway, but most importantly in Jeff City.
St. Charles County Executive Steve Ehlmann, we thank you so much for being with us tonight. We hope you'll come back soon.
Hey, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone at 9 PBS, thank you so much for watching Next Up, and have a terrific weekend. We'll see you next Thursday. Good night.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.